Here's a clip from the Land Podcast with Pat Porter. We're talking about the past year's market cycle and what he has learned over the years. Some interesting data. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Here we go. Yeah, and inflation is rampant, and I'm the furthest thing from an economist, but I hear other smart people say that land's a good hedge against inflation, and that's what we've been seeing.
Exactly.
So this is, according to this same article, this ramp up is something that we haven't seen since 1980s. So what I found interesting is obviously what's synonymous with the 1980s farm crisis.
Yeah.
So correlation, causation, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to tell you, but I found that pretty interesting. And
I had a conversation. Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I had a long conversation yesterday with a land investor, different part of the country, very well connected, got his finger on the pulse, and we were talking about that very same thing about actual tillable ground farmland. The cycles through the 70s and 80s, and he was wondering, hey, we're going to have that same dip, and I go, I personally don't think so, at least not as severe. I think the dips are going to be, there may be dips, but I don't think they'll be as severe in farmland, in tillable ground. But that's my opinion. But it could be just my optimism being in the business. But world population, everybody's got to eat. I just think those dips are going to be less severe, and I think the trajectory is probably like this. We may get there, with small dips. I hope we don't have that kind of dip like we had back in the 80s.
Sure. And something I learned this year was actually CRP was introduced in the 80s as well to help combat some of those issues. So there's infrastructure now to obviously support the bottom. And the other thing too, and this is just my opinion, that there's a lot of money out there to support the bottom, whatever that is, meaning there'll be buyers even if things do pull back. I would assume whether we want to say it or not, like institutional buyers could buy more farm ground. And I know everyone has an opinion on that, but maybe that wasn't in place in the 80s. I wasn't there. So
yeah, very same point came up yesterday in the same conversation, and I don't know that either. I have other reasons to support that I don't think the dip will be as severe, but again, I don't know. If we knew, we could bottle that up and sell it if we had that kind of information.
Absolutely, yeah. And so this same article said the 17% growth to more than $11,000 per acre is the nominal land value. Zhang said even when adjusting the survey results to account for inflation, they surpass the previous peak set in 2013, which means that both the nominal and inflation adjusted value have hit record highs since they started tracking this in the 1940s. I found that to be pretty interesting.
Wow, yeah.
And here's a couple more points from this. It said the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates to curb inflation, and it is expected to raise interest rates again. He said hits to the land market won't be felt until later in 2023 or 2024. It takes almost a decade for the land market to fully absorb the stocks. This is what this gentleman said, who's obviously they're quoting him for a reason.
Yeah. And they've got data, looking back on historical information that you and I aren't necessarily looking at right now.
Yes. Yep. But I think it's thought provoking nonetheless. And ultimately, I'll put your feet to the fire here a little bit. I mean, in terms of what you think the land market may do in 2023, do you think it's a slight correction, a large correction? Is it stable, or does it continue to increase a bit? And this is so pocketed across the country, so it's hard to, speculate.
I can only look at it sort of in my universe, my world, and I think it will correct. I think there will be a dragging down just a little bit, or at least some resistance, some slowing down. But again, to the point you just made, I think it will be slow. I think we'll see just a sort of frictional resistance and slow down, and then where it goes from there, I don't know. I'm hoping it stays, strong, but I can't predict that. We haven't seen any slowdown yet, but again, this is so. I mean, we're in the first month of 2023. Who really knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just interesting across the board. And I would say most of the people listening to this are not institutional buyers, if I had to guess who my audience is. So I guess if someone's out there, they have fanatically been saving to try to get in a position to buy a piece of ground. What would you tell that person? Because I feel maybe there's fear out there. Maybe there's still a lot of optimism. But if I called you up, I said, Pat, I've been saving money. I'm wanting to buy my first 40. This farm sure does seem like it would be something I would really like. And I have the the moat of financial backing to protect myself if things do pull back, what would you tell me or that person?
Are you buying with cash or using a lender? That'd
I
be my
will.
question right back to you.
I would say, I talked to a few banks and I am planning to get a lender. I have 25% saved up and I don't know, 6 month emergency fund.
The same thing. Again, I'm not an economist either. I'm just a humble little businessman, and I'm not even a good one at that. Just do the best I can. But the advice I've given people for over a decade is you just have to make sure that your purchase isn't something that you can't get out of if the world caves in or if life changes drastically for you. Just meaning the note, if you can easily manage that in your current lifestyle, and you've got that much equity in, I mean, that much money you're putting in it, you're probably going to be fine, because I just don't see the values of the real estate just dropping completely out where you're going to lose everything. It just has to be bought right so that you can get out of it if you need to. And that doesn't mean you make a fortune if you get out. It just means you can get out without it hurting you. And if you can manage the note, I always encourage people, to go that route. Again, I'm kind of conservative in my view, and I've got partners who are better at it than I am when we get involved in land purchases, especially bigger ones. We always have to look, hey, can we carry this thing if things get bad? And if we can, then we pull the trigger. If we can't, we look at it a little closer.
Sure. Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that should be on the forefront of everyone's. I think people sometimes get really excited, as they should, because it is exciting and you have been working really hard for a long time. But to your point, maybe don't get too excited, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I always tell people, that when they're buying a tract farm to hunt, it's kind of a luxury purchase. So can you manage that in your lifestyle without every month being a headache or every quarter being a new challenge? Because if things get tougher, it becomes even harder. So you just got to be able to manage it comfortably. And if you can, great, go for it. And especially if you bought it well, that doesn't mean you stole it, but you just bought it well. You haven't overpaid. And so you can get out of a deal if you have to without it necessarily, ruining your life. You may lose a little money. Everybody can, anybody in that position can afford a little bit of a hit, a little bit of a loss. But, if it's a big, big hard hit, those are tough to overcome for your average guy out there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another phrase or thought that always comes to mind is like time heals all bad deals, quote unquote bad deals. So if you were able to hold on and, things go back to maybe even 2019 or 2018 type of just like the feeling of the market, meaning it's just a little bit more quote unquote normal, because it has been really interesting to watch really the last 2 years. And I bet you the first time we talked, we probably had a very similar conversation in terms of what we just discussed. Like the strategies and principles don't change from the times I've talked to you anyhow.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah. If you'd asked me this 2 years ago when things were on fire and crazy stupid, I'd have said the same thing. You still got to be able to manage, carry that load comfortably without it wrecking your life if things go bad.
I hope you guys enjoyed this. My name is Jake Hofer, and I'm a real estate agent out of the state of Illinois, and it's my goal to help 100 people buy their first farm. Been doing that with the Land Podcast and clips like this every single Thursday and Saturday that are released here on the channel. And to be one of those 100 people, all you have to do is, if you're in the state of Illinois and I can help you, I'd be happy to do so. Number two, if you want to get connected with someone that can help you, reach out and I'll be happy to get you in contact with an agent that I would personally do business with. And the last one is, if you just simply learn something from the content we're putting out, or you get inspired to take action, I want to know, get you out of that spreadsheet. I'm on a mission to help 100 people. Until next time, see ya.